welcome back to the Introvert Circus. I'm Sassafras. This is Sirius. Pretty sure my cat thing's hanging around back there. And we are back with another Vlogmas video as part of our 12 Tricks of Christmas series. And these are teaching tricks that are part of our book. If you have not done so already, definitely check out our books, Tricks in the City and Shoe This Journal. They're available wherever books are sold. Shoe This Journal is also actually at Urban Outfitters locations if you're looking to pick up a copy for the holidays. And a free way you can support our channel is by subscribing and giving this video a like. So today's tutorial is going to be a follow-up to one of the last tutorials we uploaded, which was the touch cue where dogs are touched. Good. Putting their nose onto your palm. And I got a request in our training group on Facebook, which is always linked in the description box below. It's Tricks in the City on Facebook, same name as our book, which was to give a tutorial for how to teach a duration hold. So where your dog is going to hold their nose against your hand until they're cued to release, as opposed to just a quick touch. So we're going to work on teaching that today. It's a really fun thing to teach. And I actually realized when I got the request to teach that in the group that Sirius doesn't know that cue, which actually makes it a perfect thing to work on with her, because you'll be able to see a little bit of the training process, or at least how I start to teach that cue. So before we start working, I want to just talk a little bit about how I teach and what it looks like for duration. So I have two different kinds of duration cues or behaviors that I teach my dogs. The first is an implied duration. So by that I mean, if I ask my dog to do a stationary behavior, a sit, a down, stand in particular, my expectation is that that behavior is an implied stay or an implied hold that behavior until you're cued to do something else, which might be a release to go do whatever you want, or it might be the next behavior that I want for a trick series we're working on, for rally obedience, whatever it is. And then there are cues that are movement cues. So things like a wave, or a high five, or a nose touch, which are movements, and so they have a built-in duration to them, which is you do this thing and that is the end of the behavior. And so when I'm teaching my dog to hold a behavior, say like a nose touch, that kind of becomes a little bit different, and I do use a secondary cue for it, so my dog knows that I want something different. So when I go about teaching these behaviors, what I'm doing is, I know you're going to want to have treats, and I have a clicker. We'll see if I actually use my clicker. I'm notorious for using my verbal marker instead of my clicker, but maybe I'll use my clicker. So when I'm teaching a cue with duration, how I do that is that I will build in rapid rewarding. So for example, seriously, down. Thank you. She knows a chin. Good. Hold. Good. You're actually, I know I didn't. Hold. Good. Yes. So my chin cue is kind of an in-between one. It's kind of a stationary cue. It's kind of a movement cue. But it's one of the ones that I will often teach sort of what I call like the hold behavior, which is hold that thing that you're doing with, because it makes it really easy. She knows chin, chin, thank you, hold. And so when I'm first teaching it, I'll give the chin cue, and I will just feed, these are kind of awkward treats for this because they're crunchy. I will just rapid treat, and then I will release, and they move. Good, sit, it's kind of hard to see. Chin, hold. Yes. And so then you can build up until they're holding themselves. But when you're first starting, serious, chin, hold. You're going to be letting them sort of free feed, hold. Seriously. I know, these are really weird treats for this. Chin, hold, hold, chin. Good. And so I'm just going to free feed them right when they're in that position, operate, and release as soon as the treats are gone. So that's how I start to teach an understanding of what hold is. So for something like touch, that she knows really well, good girl, to start to add in a duration on it is actually, for me, teaching a completely different behavior, because the criteria is that I've taught her for that skill is that I want a firm nose to hand pressure, and then it can be a release. Touch. Good. And she is very happy to offer that behavior, and so what I'm going to do, she knows it very well, to start to teach her duration. She also knows push, which is to push very hard on like a ball with her nose. Push. Yes. And so I can kind of try to combine it and build up the duration very, very slowly. The easiest way to do that is to very incrementally ask for just slightly more pressure or time of their nose on your hand before you praise, click, release, etc. Or you can start to incorporate verbals in that they may know for other skills. I tend to err on the side of overly talking and communicating with my dog. It's not every trainer's style, but it works well for me and my dogs. Touch. Good. Touch. So we just started to work on this. So she's going to offer it a lot. Hold. Touch. I know. Hold. Touch. Yes. So there I got just like a fraction of a second longer. And I play around a little bit with verbal cues. I'm actually using my push cue because it's giving her a little more information about the kind of behavior that I want. Push. 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 And she's going to offer things, and I'm just going to wait her out. Push. Yes. So there we got back to close to what I'm wanting. So we can build on that just in fractions of a second. Push. I know, I'm getting our location so you guys can see it to the second easier. Push. Yes! There we go. That's what I want. Push. Push. Yes! So what I'm actually there too is slightly shifting my hand mechanics, which is I'm holding my hand more at a V, which for her is more comfortable. She would rather keep her nose pressed against my hand where it's not flat against my hand, and that's completely fine. I can continue to model or mold that cue as she gets more experience with exactly what I want. Push. 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 Yes, good girl. So you can see her trying different things, figuring out what I want. I wouldn't actually need to be using any verbals there at all, but I'm overly chatty when I train. Yes, good girl. So there you can see her start to puzzle out, is that what you want? I think that's what you want. Can you guys see this? Let me try to move you a little bit too. Push. Yes, good girl. So when she has her hand, or has her nose in my hand, I don't know if you guys can see this. See it? Let me move her. Good. I know. See if we can do it this way. I know. Push. She's going to try things, so we change positions. Push. Push. Yes, good girl. She actually has her nose kind of like right above my fingers, and that's completely fine with me for learning this because it's more comfortable for her. Push. Yes, good girl. And I'm letting her come to my hand. Push. Push. Yes, good girl. And only very, very slowly starting to add any kind of additional duration onto that because she's still figuring it out. Push. Push. Good girl. Push. And she's going to try to offer a chin wrap. Yes, good girl. So if this is actually the point, because I am overly chatty with my dog and it doesn't tend to confuse her, because she's used to me, I would insert a verbal cue that I might want, which we're going to call that pressure. Pressure. Good girl. Pressure. Yes, good girl. So she's like, oh, that's what you want. You just want me to push it to hold my nose there. Okay, so I'm actually going to start to also bring my thumb in quicker. And ideally, when you're doing this, you're going to want to do it over multiple training sessions. She and I started working on this yesterday, but I wanted to sort of show you how I progress. Pressure. Pressure. Just offering a chin rest because that's been highly rewarded. Pressure. Yes, good girl. Good. Upright. Get up. They're gonna get up. Good. Good. Spin. Turn. We returns around. Good girl. And working on the other side. Pressure. Pressure. Yes, good girl. So there she chose to release herself. It was slightly sooner than I wanted to. I hadn't cued the release yet, so I just waited until she came back into position. Pressure. Pressure. Yes! Good girl. So you can see her, ooh, messy cues, messy treats. Start to put those pieces together as the criteria begins to shift. So touch, good. So that's our touch. She knows that. Touch. Good. And so then we can start to incorporate the duration as a different cue. Pressure. Yes. Good girl. So she's picking that up super, super quickly. But you saw it's still a work in progress. She really doesn't, she didn't know this a day ago. Pressure. 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 Think about it. Yes. Yes, good girl. So there she's going to try different things, and that was because she is more confident in it on this hand, because it's just what I worked more of. Serious. Pressure. Yes. Good girl. So some of it is just waiting them out once you have a sense that they know a little bit about what you're trying to work on. And pressure. Good girl. And you can already see that I'm able to start to fade out what started with was my thumb being more open, because she was like, okay, maybe it's kind of like a chin rest. It's also just a little more comfortable. And now she's like, oh, I'm totally comfortable just pressing my nose into your hand for a while. Pressure. Yes, good girl. So that's really how I do it. And then I can slowly, again, just build that duration. This was something I built the duration on really, really quickly, kind of over the course of this video, and just a very short session last night introducing her to the concept. But she's a dog who already understood some of these sort of like basic concepts of both touch, but then the more advanced context already of adding duration. Chin. And being able to know that that was a cue, operate, that had built-in duration to it. So it's taking that same skill and translating it to a different behavior, like what we're calling pressure. Pressure. Yes, good girl. And, you know, she is still figuring out those pieces, but you can actually kind of see, I think, in the video, her starting to make those connections come together, because this is, again, new skills for her that she is putting together, which is super fun, but she's put it together really, really quickly. So I hope this answered some questions about how I teach duration for behaviors like touch, and it's really about going in tiny, tiny incremental steps to very, very slowly build your dog's understanding and duration in like fractions of a second. It's the same as like when I'm teaching something like hold. I build up duration very, very slowly, and focusing on trying to get as much time as possible early on is going to ultimately end up backfiring often later. It's really about that foundation of focusing on tiny, tiny incremental amounts of time that gets your dog to really understand what you're looking for, which means you can get that long duration easier later on. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope that you are having fun with your dogs. If you have requests for training tutorials that you would like to see in Vlogmas or at any other time, please let us know. Sirius and I love to make training tutorials. And we will see you and your dogs in another video very, very soon. And in the meantime, have fun with your dogs.